I don't know how many of you know this, but I'm going to go through it anyway. So this is network cabling. This is unshielded twisted pair, and there are 8 wires in here. So there is 4 pairs, and they are twisted for the electrical properties. And we use 4 of them in a standard network. If you're using power over Ethernet to power a device over the wire, like a wireless access point, then it uses the other wires too. But we use 4 of these, and we're going to punch down all 8 of them on this jack. And on the jack, there are 2 patterns. There's an A and a B pattern. For networking, we use B. I think for phones, most of the time we use A or something, but we use B for that. So we have to untwist all the wires. And so what we do next is we follow the B pattern. So each pair has a solid and a mixed with white. So there's, for example, orange and white. There's brown and white, green and white, and blue and white. So we'll follow the pattern. We bring the wire in this way, and in this case we follow that. So orange and white goes there, orange there, green and white, like that. Then on this side, blue and white, again matching up with B, the bottom color code here, brown and white, and then brown. And this is the jack that's going to go in the wall to plug the network into. And then on these jacks, you put this little plastic thing on here, and you use a pair of pliers like this to just gently squeeze down on it, and it punches them down on there and makes contact. There's little metal things in there that kind of cut into the wires. There's 2 of them. Sometimes there's 1 piece to put on there, and these jacks have 2. And then we just trim off the excess wires. So then we have our wall plate. We take the jack, we insert it bottom first, snap it in, and that's what the front looks like. I'll have 3 in each one. It's good to have multiple runs to each plate. That way you can plug in multiple devices without having to have a switch or a hub at each location. It makes it a little bit easier. All right, so now what you're going to see, this is the patch panel. This is where my network switch will go. This is going to be the other end of those network jacks you saw in the wall. So if you're wondering where the other end of that wire goes, it goes here, and then a patch cable will patch that into the network switch and connect everything together. Now, right now, this is mounted backwards on this box. This box will eventually be mounted on the wall, and this piece will be flipped around the other way. I mount it backwards so that I have something solid to mount this to so that I can work on it, and then I'll show you a video and pictures of this when it's finished and mounted on the wall. But I wanted to show you how this side works. This side we use a punch tool. There's 2 ends to this. One's called a 66, the other one's called a 110. I think this is the 66 if I'm not mistaken. It's been a long time since I've done this, but the other side's a 110, and it's for the little metal pieces like you would see in a phone closet with all the wires connected directly to it. And so similarly to the jacks, these are all color coded, and the brown and blue are the same for A and B. So and these labels are off a little bit. So 1 is the first 4 up here and the first 4 down here, and A is closest and B is this pattern here. So what I would do is bring my cable in this way and put my wires in like this, just like I did with the jack. And if you look at the tip of this, you'll see there's a little sharp edge. So when I punch this down, I do it 2 or 3 times, and it cuts the little wire off at the end. And it's that easy. And then once they're all in, I'll put a zip tie on here to hold these in tight so that they don't pull loose and pull out of here. Now, one of the things I didn't show you earlier was when I was pulling these wires, as I pulled them, I marked each wire, numbered them with a Sharpie on each end, so I would know which wire was which, and I wouldn't have to use a toner to tone them out and trace them. And then as I'm cutting them, I'm remarking them higher on the wire so that I know that later on either myself or someone else is going to have to figure out which wire is which. Maybe one gets knocked loose or cut or something, or it has to be traced out, and they'll be labeled at the jack. They're not only going to be labeled on the front of the jack, but if they take the plate off the wall, it's written on the wire behind the plate, and it's written on the wire behind the patch panel. And someone someday, maybe it'll be me, maybe it'll be someone else, will say, thank goodness whoever did this numbered the wires so it makes my job easier. With all of them pushed down on the jacks on the other side, they're numbered, and we'll get the box mounted on the wall and show you what this looks like when it's all up there and finished. So here's what the box looks like mounted on the wall. You saw it mounted in reverse. Now I've flipped it around and mounted it correctly. And the first 10 ports are what I'm using right now, and the rest will be open for future use if we need them. And I've mounted it on the wall above the door that goes from the warehouse into the office. So it's up out of the way. There's nothing going to use this area above the door. And we've got the slack rolled up and zip tied up here. Always leave extra slack. That way if anyone ever needs to move this or anything, there's extra cable here. It doesn't hurt for it to be there, and you just roll it up neat and tie it up, get it out of the way. And so once all the gear is in here, I'll update the video down the road sometime, maybe the next day or two, when I have everything in here and hooked up, that you'll see how everything goes in for the network. Okay, another day down and a little more progress. I did forget one thing with the permit. There was zoning that hadn't been done yet. That was just something they do. They don't come out for that. They just check to verify the location you're at is suitable and zoned correctly for your type of business, and we already knew it was. And so I just got the email today that it passed, and so that was the last thing. I thought the fire department was, but the zoning hadn't been done yet. So that's done, and we're just waiting on the occupancy permit now. And like I said before, I'm just okay if that takes a day or two, because everything else is done and passed, and I know I'm going to get it. It's just a matter of waiting till they get it to me. So kudos to Lee County, Florida, for just absolutely rocking through that stuff. Got all that done in a week. That was amazing. And it probably could have been done quicker than that, but I pushed the fire department off a couple days so I could get my fire extinguishers mounted and everything. So that was pretty impressive. I had a few comments the last few days about a couple things. One was someone said they talked about my work ethic and how much I've been working, how dedicated I am, and the hours I put in and things. And I wanted to talk about that for a minute. And when it comes to I guess work ethic, or just putting in the time and working hard, that's something I've always done. And I've always considered myself kind of, you do whatever it takes to survive kind of person. I grew up pretty poor in a rural area in West Virginia, and when I moved out of home when I was 18 and went and lived with some friends to get a job, because where they lived I could walk 1.5 miles to the bus stop, and where my parents lived it was 3 miles to walk to the bus stop. And I did that for a few months until I had enough money for a down payment on a car, and just got started in life. And took all the overtime I could get at my first job at Circuit City, and then eventually worked 2 jobs and did work on the side, did everything I could to make extra money here and there. I was talking to someone the other day, and I mentioned something about when I was in my 20s about how lazy I was. And looking back on it, I wasn't lazy. I worked 2 jobs most of my 20s. And if I wasn't working 2 jobs, I was working like 70 or 80 hours a week on one job. And that was just to make ends meet so I could get ahead or not fall quite as far behind. I don't think I was ever really ahead when I was in my 20s. And that made me tired, so I laid around a lot when I wasn't working. Therefore, I felt lazy. I didn't want to go anywhere or do anything. And I think that gave myself the perception that I was lazy because I didn't want to do those things, but it was because I worked so much. And those were the things that it took to just get ahead. And I have this debate with people every now and then when people say, oh, you just can't get ahead. The system's designed for everyone to fail, and it works against everyone and everything. And I've just always looked at it like that you're not promised anything when you come into this world. And we're fortunate that we live in a country with the freedoms that allow you to go out and do what's necessary to make something of yourself. And you can be as successful as you want to be depending on a lot of factors, and a large part of that is how hard you work. And I just put in the time and effort. Fortunately for me, one of the things that I've enjoyed my entire life is learning. So I've learned a lot over the years in a lot of different areas, and I'm able to apply that. And that brings me to something someone else said the other day. Someone commented and said, is there anything you won't tackle? And the other day I did a video talking about when I was doing some drywall work here in the office. I painted the office. I've done drywall work. I did my network cabling. We're going to be setting up the warehouse. I've designed all of our websites. I'll be doing all of our marketing. I'll be, just doing everything. The operations will revolve around the things that I design and set up, and the workflow that I set up and everything. And the answer to that is I don't. I told them, I said, I'll have to get back to you on that with a smiley face, because I don't know that there's much that I won't tackle. When I worked in IT and consulting, we did a lot of different things. We did mid-range accounting systems. We did electronic health records solutions for physicians, private practice physicians, document imaging systems. I did all the IT, security, email. I worked for an internet provider in 1994. One of the first, I think we were, based on the research I did, we were one of the first 100 internet providers in the country. So I was doing telephone modems, dial-up modem support for internet. I was hosting websites on Windows NT Server in 1995, before anyone else was really doing, before Microsoft came out with Internet Information Server. And when I was 20 years old, my brothers and I changed the engine in my car. I mentioned the other day that I did drywall for one of my brothers as a teenager, so I was around a lot of construction. I had a stepfather when I was young that did a lot of things himself. I tell people when I talk about that, I say I watched him change the tires on his truck with a crowbar and a mattock, because he didn't have the $10 or whatever it cost in 1979 to pay someone to change the tires at the gas station. And when you do those kind of things and you watch someone do that, you learn how to do things like your own plumbing and your own electrical work. Am I good at it? Yeah, I'm pretty good at that stuff. I'm not as good as someone that does electrical for a living, or plumbing for a living, or drywall for a living even, but I do it well enough that it's good enough for me. And I understand it very well. Of course, I have an engineering degree, electronic engineering, and so no, there's not too much I won't tackle, too much I won't try. I did some plumbing work in our old house one time, and Tammy's father, before he passed away, came down and he said, "How did you learn how to do this?" And because he said, "You work on computers, right?" And not to minimize what plumbers or anyone else with a skilled trade does for a living, because those people are amazing. They do incredible work, and they do it 10 times faster and probably 10 times better than I do. But I said, what I do is, at the time, I said, is so technical that most people can't even really comprehend it. And I said, I think I should at least be backwards compatible. I should be able to read a book or something and understand, or watch a video and understand how to do it. I've repaired our washing machine before. Our air conditioner, our furnace. I changed the furnace in our old house by myself, a gas furnace, because we were broke at the time and didn't have a choice. I bought a used furnace and changed it out. So no, there's not too much I won't tackle. The part of the reason for that is because I'm a problem solver by nature. I grew up just with that curiosity of wanting to fix things and how to solve problems. And that came in handy over the years, and that's one of the things that made me good at IT, because working in IT, you solve problems every day. That's all you do, is you solve problems generally. And I had a good memory, so when I would solve a problem, I usually remembered what it was. You could probably pull a service ticket from 20 years ago and read it to me, and I could probably tell you what I typed into the ticket as what I did to fix the problem. And those, being a problem solver, when we, in my former company, we were growing so fast, every day I went to work, there were problems to deal with and problems to solve. One of the things that I did in that company was when we implemented the assembly line that was our picking system for orders at the time. We went through 7 or 8 different iterations of how to pick orders, and every time we would, every like 60 days or so, 60 to 90 days, we would run into this bottleneck. We'd have to rearrange the entire thing to fix this one issue, and then we'd run into another bottleneck that we couldn't fix without rearranging the entire thing again. And we did, like I said, we did that 7 or 8 times, and we reached a point when we were getting like 500 orders a day, and we could not ship them all. Every day there was 100 orders that had to wait till the next day to be shipped, and we just couldn't get it done. And we had like 30 people picking orders and 10 people shipping orders, and those 30 people couldn't get it done and keep the 10 people shipping orders busy enough. And so I went in one day and spent about 6 hours on a Sunday in my office by myself. I went in, I parked in another part of the parking lot, and I went upstairs early before anyone else got there and turned my lights off, and no one even knew I was there all day, and sat up there by myself and worked on this project plan to redo that whole picking area. And I implemented it 2 weeks. It was in 2018, 2 weeks before Black Friday. And on the Saturday, we weren't able to ship 500 orders a day at that point. The Saturday after Black Friday that year, we shipped 2,513 orders in one day. And so we went from not being able to ship 500 to over 2,500 in one day. And it flip-flopped from going from 30 people picking orders to 10 people not being able to stay busy shipping, to 10 or 12 people picking orders and 20 or 25 people shipping couldn't keep up. And I said that I thought that was probably the biggest thing I did in my career because of the impact it had on the company. And this wasn't, I mentioned in a video yesterday about the health study that I did, and many people would look at that and say, wow, that's got to be the biggest thing you've ever done. I mean, there was a movie made about it, the full motion picture about what happened preceding that health study. It was called Dark Waters. It had Mark Ruffalo in it, who played Rob Ballard, who was the attorney that handled most of the case out of Cincinnati. And there was a little piece in there where they showed the testing that was going on. It was not portrayed the way it really happened. But anyway, the full motion picture. There were multiple documentaries from National Geographic and The Devil We Know that I mentioned, where I'm in the credits. All these things. It probably cost DuPont billions of dollars for the work that we did. And because they restructured their entire company to protect themselves against lawsuits, and they changed the chemical that's in Teflon and Gore-Tex and Silverstone and all these products out there, Stainmaster, anything that was non-stick or non-stain. And a lot of people would look at that and say, that is massive. That is the biggest. And I really feel like that changing how we picked orders was the biggest thing I ever did because of the impact that it had on our company. It, propelled our company more than 5 times over where we were at, about 6 times over where we were, with one change over one day's time. that we did that. And those are the kind of problems I like to solve. That's what makes me tick. That's what, it's almost like a drug. The best way I can explain that was when I came out of school in 1992. Like I said, my degree's in electronic engineering, and I originally planned on going into like consumer electronics repair. And a good friend of mine that I worked with, Kenny, he gave me a television one day. He said it was a 19-inch Zenith color television, the old CRTs, and he said, "Here, take this and play with it and see if you can fix it." And he said it doesn't come on, and thought you might like to play with it. So I took it home, ordered the schematic. I worked on it probably every evening for 6 weeks. 9 different things were wrong with it. And, I would fix a problem and then I would make it to the next stage, fix that problem, make it to the next stage. Then one evening, I reached around and I hit the power button and it came on. And I can't explain the high that I experienced from that. And that was probably the first time I realized what solving a problem did for me. I mean, I was on top of the world when that happened. And it was funny because like a year later, he came over to my house and I had the television on, and he came up to my office and he was sitting there talking to me, and he looked over and he went, "Is that the television I gave you?" He couldn't believe it was working. I thought I'd told him, but I guess I hadn't. And but it was funny. But solving problems is what really does it for me. And by doing this, I had a problem to solve the other day. I had to figure out how to get this place painted. So I did it. I bought a sprayer and I figured out how to get this done, and I painted the whole place in a weekend. I had to figure out, one of my problems was figuring out how to get my occupancy permit. I had to go research that with Lee County. Fortunately, they have a good resources online, told me how to do it. Everything's a problem that you have to solve. And when you're a business owner, or if you're going to start a business, you better be ready to solve problems because they don't solve themselves. And that's one of the things probably that attracts me to being an entrepreneur, is that it really feeds that need that I have, that hunger that I have to solve problems. Now, the other thing someone mentioned was my attitude, and that they said they really admired my attitude through all of this and everything we've been through for the past several months, past couple of years or whatever. And that's something that I've just always tried to do. I don't always have a good attitude. I mean, sometimes I'm a jerk. It's just human nature. If you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, don't get enough rest, don't feel good, whatever, Tammy will tell you. But I look at things that I try really hard. I don't always make it, but I try really hard to look at things that I can, or whether I can or cannot control them. If I cannot control them, such as a hurricane and what happens afterwards, the aftermath, and how it affects everything, I couldn't control that. I couldn't control that the contractors moved into the area and leased all the space. I couldn't control that this was our best option to rent a space that's a little bit farther away from the house. It's a little bit less convenient. It's a little bit bigger and more expensive than we wanted. I can't control that, but what I can control is what we do with it, and change my business plan a little bit and be ready to roll a little bit harder and go after it a little bit faster. So those are the things in my control. And then when things go our way, and the past 3 or 4 weeks especially have really gone our way, and being able to make forward progress and on almost every aspect of what we've done over the past 3 or 4 weeks, it puts you in a good mood and makes you feel good. And I wish everyone could experience that, because it is truly a wonderful feeling. And if you start a business, you're going to have ups and downs, and you've got to be able to fight through the downs. And man, when you're on the upside, to enjoy it and enjoy that ride, because it is phenomenal and there is nothing like it. And that's something that we, Tammy and I, both enjoy, is being on that upside when it's happening. When it's on the downside, yeah, it's rough, but in our life, I think we've experienced enough rough times that we know how to respond to it, we know how to handle it, and if we don't, that we balance each other out and try to keep our heads up, and try to remind each other to keep our heads up and keep it moving forward, even if it's tough. So, but network cabling is installed now. Tomorrow I'm going to stop at the storage unit probably and see if I can pick up my network gear. If I can find it, some of the stuff's buried, but I think I can get that out of here and probably install it, hook it up tomorrow. Doing everything I can that doesn't violate the don't move in yet until you have your permit thing. So just trying to get the place as ready as I can without the permit, and hopefully by the time I get some of that stuff knocked out, we'll be able to get things moving. So. But maybe, if you don't hear from me for a day or two, it just means I don't have an update yet. But appreciate you following along, and I'll give you another update as soon as I can.